And we're live. Round of applause, everybody. Round of applause. So welcome here, SpeakuP Monday, episode number 400. I can't wait. 400, yes. So look, today has been maybe 2 years or more in the works. He's a brother who's come all the way from the US to have this incredible Q&A with us today. He's a former vice president of a multi-billion-dollar company called Kraft, which we'll get into more and more. Now, for those of you, my name is Robert Ian Bonnick. I'm here in Indonesia. And what I love to do is to bring incredible people and businesses together to create profitable enterprises here in Indonesia, focusing here in Bali. And look, today, Robert N. Johnson, my guest, I've mentioned before, that he is already this 25 years in Kraft, 14 different assignments. I've got a list here of associations of which he's part, including the Smithsonian, Kraft Foods, Proctor Gamble, Indiana University, Adelante Foundation from Honduras, the Seafarers Ministry out of the port of Oakland, California. Thank you. And, ACommon1 Connectivity is how you find him on the website. Very rarely do I get to interview guests that have, and that's probably a third of the associations of which you're part of, right? Maybe my first question to you is obviously welcome back to Indonesia, welcome to Bali. Look, what I'd love to go into with this interview with you is about, this is called SpeakuP Monday, Destination Indonesia. We'll find you a chair, young lady. Destination in Indonesia. Now, we're here in this incredible nation because we have people tuning in from the US and all over the world. Indonesia is the most beautiful country in the world. It has about 17,000 plus islands, approaching 300 million people, one of the youngest populations, the earliest adopters of technology in the world, deglobalization proof, right? They have a fertility rate that's growing. There will be, number four, the fourth most populous country in the world, but will soon be the fourth largest economy in the world within the next 2 or 3 decades. And this is, again, about a third of what Indonesia brings to the table. So part of what we're going to be talking about tonight is, for those watching overseas, why should I come to Indonesia? Why should I come to Bali? That's one aspect that we're going to be going into. What is the business and culture of Indonesia? I know you've traveled extensively, which we'll get into. And also, what kind of values, what kind of gems can you impart, which add great value to those of us perhaps striving to become VPs or striving to become entrepreneurs or striving in our own businesses to do more, to be greater, to contribute on a stronger, more powerful level. So that's probably the longest introduction I've ever done. Woo, but listen, my brother, when I ask you, what is Indonesia to you, what comes up?
So first of all, appreciate being here. Appreciate everyone who's coming and those who are viewing now and those who will view later. And I also want to thank the Indonesian society, government. I mean, I started in Jakarta. I've been here for a couple weeks in the country of Indonesia. So I've been to Indonesia before, but opted to spend more time here. So I was in Menteng in Jakarta, loved it. Surabaya, loved it. The call to prayer was so special. I've been around the world, but I've never been in a place where you got to hear the call to prayer as often. It was very special. And then this is my second time to Bali. I came here back in 2015, but I only came for 2 nights and maybe 30 hours. So I just bopped in and bopped out and didn't see anything. So this time I came in earlier and I went to, I think somebody said Kubu. So I spent a little time just straight north of the island and just had coffee on the side of the terrace. But you asked about Indonesia. I've been trying to influence more Americans in general to vacation and do business outside of our typical comfort zone, which is the Caribbean, which is North America, which is Europe, and spend more time in what we call South-South countries. Those are countries around the equator and south. And there's just so much opportunity there. And what the ASEAN countries are doing over here is phenomenal, which Indonesia has been the lead and actually helped drive the creation of ASEAN. So though Indonesia has always been on the radar, I just think Indonesia should be elevated even more so. Not just for business, I think there's a lot to learn from culture. The Smithsonian has worked with Indonesia for, decades, bringing Indonesian culture to Washington, D.C. and other places. So, Smithsonian may be in the U.S., but it is actually, we view it as a research and museum for the whole world.
The value aspect, right? So we've spoken about Indonesia, and by the way, Rob's been retired for, is it 8 years?
I retired at 50 years old, and I just turned 58 this year. Yeah. So I walked away from everything when I turned 50.
Yeah, and the philanthropic...
but to do that, you got to build up your FU money, too. If you want to learn about FU money, I'll charge you for it, but we can...
One of the things which I think is really important, getting straight into the value, is you've obviously had this eminent career, which is still going, and we can get into some of the things that you're doing of late. But I think we spoke about this, is it the 7 C's, which I think is really powerful for those of us, who are on the rise or who just want to kind of delve a little bit deeper into what are those finer points that will allow me to give me that springboard of understanding that gets me there in I wouldn't say the fastest possible way, but gets me there in a powerful way.
Yeah, people talk about control the controllables, and there's a lot of things we have to solve within ourselves. Usually I talk about 3. I expanded on the C's with him more than I usually do, but if you look at the core 3 of the C's, and I'll go into the other ones, chance, choice, and concentration. By chance, we are born where we are born, to whom we are born to. You have no control of that. I have no control. We have no control who our parents are. We have no control what country we're born in. That is by chance, right? But there comes a time as we get a certain age, we have choice. And once we say we're an adult, the choices are ours. And if those who understand probability, no choice is still making no choice is still making a choice, right? So if you ever hear somebody says, I had no choices, and they did nothing, they made a choice, right? Voting and not voting is a choice. Not voting is you decided not. And that, I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just saying you made a choice to trust everybody else to represent you. Fine, okay. So, chance, our parents are who our parents are. Once you get a certain age, if you had not the best of time with your parents, shake it away, you know what I mean? You can't keep blaming them. But some people had great times, you know what I mean? And feel blessed that you had the great times, but feel blessed that you know your parents. Not everybody had that opportunity. And so, chance, choice, concentration. A lot of people make choices, 0 concentration. And they're constantly starting and stopping, starting and stopping, starting and stopping. And I'm not saying everybody has to stay at one firm like I did, but the point is make strategic choices, not emotional choices. A lot of people quit jobs because they don't like their boss. And what I used to tell people, I'm like, okay, well, if you quit your job because you don't like your boss, guess what? They won. And what I learned over the years is, and I learned this from my grandfather, because he believes that, like, if you're of good spirit, bad spirit people do not want to be around good spirit people. You know what I mean? So if you have and pick a religion, but the point is, if you really have a good spirit, you make people who don't really have a great spirit very uncomfortable. And my grandfather would sit next to people who would come to our church in Albany who would be disruptive, and he was a very quiet man, and he would sit right next to the disruptive drunk or whatever it was, and he's just calm. He wouldn't say anything to them, and they would calm down or they would leave and no longer be disruptive at the church, right? And so back to people quitting their bosses. I opted not to have my bosses make me quit, because I knew that I felt like I was a good person, but I also knew that either you're going to learn to like me, I'll learn something about myself, or you'll have a heart attack and you got to move on. You know what I mean? It's just blunt, right? So I wanted to get something out of it, and I was not going to let evil drive me out.
Love that, man. You know, and obviously, like, you're a brother of color, you know, and in the U.S., you know, this is not a deep question, but it gets to it. So you've managed to do.
I look pretty big on camera. Boy, I got some work to do.
You know,
I got triplets here.
Your triplets. So all good. So, you know, what would you say? Because I mean, you mentioned there about quitting your boss, and I know you had 14 assignments and so on. And so you're a person who, in your career, on the way up. Now, this is regardless of whichever ism, sexism, classism, racism, sexism, whatever it might be. But, you know, how did you go through and be still inspired to keep going, to keep striving to reach where you did?
Well, there's a couple things. Associations. A lot of us leave a lot of things on the table, right? And when you're not born into it, if you're not born into whatever name it is, whatever country you're in, then you have to create those things. And I think a lot of people leave, everybody searches for a network, but they leave their network on the table. And I knew from a young age that my associations mattered, and they opened up doors for me that I never knew. Because most people chase that oneism, but I knew that if I had information, because I chased information, which gave me avenues that I never imagined, right? So I stayed connected with people I went to high school with. I stayed connected with people I worked in, I went to college with. I'm still in contact with the first job I had at a veterinarian that I worked in high school from 15 to 16 years old, Dr. Luane Dunaway, because I wanted to be a vet, which I opted not to, but I'm still in touch. I still write 50 to 100 minimum letters, handwritten letters a year to various people. Associations. So there's a lot of people chasing that. Former employers. The first thing when somebody comes to me and they want to tap into my network, I ask a simple question. What about your associations? How are they? Number two, what would your former employer say about you? Every last one of my former employers have positive things to say about me. And my dad said it when I used to work for him at the construction site. He used to say, Bob, master the assignment that I gave you, and then learn what everybody else does that plugs into what you do. And there's so many people, they just go, I'm just a salesperson, I'm just information, I'm just programming, and they only do their own. But he goes, understand what plugs into what you do. And that made me bigger than what I ever imagined. You know, and which created a demand. So the question becomes, your associations, how you leverage them, you create a demand in, it's all about what you solve. People don't pay you because they like you. And usually I ask people, like, what do you solve? If you can't tell me in a couple seconds what you solve, then let's just have coffee and a beer, because we don't need to talk about anything else.
And as a alliteration to that, I remember a story about how you were invited to the Smithsonian. So maybe, I think that's a great alliteration to the story of,
So for my university, Indiana University, I take hot calls from anyone. So if you have a question about a career, people go, call Robert. And so there's this one time somebody called me and said, well, they said I was, I told them I was interested in going into the food and beverage consumer products industry. And they said, well, call Robert Johnson, because they were considering doing a master's degree. And so I took the call. Well, this person happened to be on contract at the Smithsonian a decade and a half ago. And I said, well, before you tell me what you want to do, tell me what you have done and what you are doing. Because I don't care what you want to do. I need to understand what you've already done. And so I found out what they were doing, and that got me introduced to the Smithsonian. And I've been connected to the staff and a lot of the other people for a decade and a half, because even though I sit on the board, I take an interest in the staff and other people at the Smithsonian. So for, if you show up enough, people go, hey, how about you become a board member, And so that's in D.C. And so there's not a board And if you go to ACommon1 Connectivity.com, ACommon1 Connectivity.com, there's not a board that I have been on that I pursued. And then I worked at Kraft Foods and Proctor Gamble. I did not ask to pursue a job at Proctor Gamble. I was recommended by the deans to interview with Procter & Gamble, which is a multi-billion-dollar company, because when I was a student, I was creating programs for undergraduates to talk to seniors to understand what degree they should go to, because not everybody have parents they can talk to. And I was using my own money to pay for those programs, which got me noticed. So when you're doing, you'd be amazed who's looking. So that gave me, I got hired at Procter & Gamble before I graduated. Think about that. And I made more than my mom and dad combined. I felt guilty. And then, I mean, think about that. That's like a heavy guilt. And I got a company car. You should have seen it. So when they said, like, they go, hey, Mr. Jones, they hired me on the first interview. I go, I don't want to work for you. The dean made me come. You know, and I didn't, most people, think about when most people go to an interview, guess what they show up with? They show up with a tablet and their resume. Everybody does. I didn't do that. I had always collected and quantified everything that I did. And I showed up with a portfolio. And whenever they said, I said, well, I was with my fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. I helped drive this program. You know, they used to get this amount of people come in. We raised the price. It generated this. And I started taking them through all these different things. They're like, you quantified over there? Like, you're hired. If you take this test and you're not that stupid, we'll take you. So anyway, so I got her. And then when I was in Louisville, Kentucky, working for Procter & Gamble, and I'm talking about associations and when you're doing how you get noticed, Kraft Foods heard about me. Well, they weren't even a direct competitor to Procter & Gamble, but what happened is when I was at P&G in Kentucky, there was a lot of people who were quitting, and I didn't complain, so I would work during the day, and then I would start again at 9 p.m. when some of the leadership of our clients were coming in, and I'd work in the evening, right? Well, when everyone was quitting, then the data that came in the marketplace, guess who got the credit for all the data in the marketplace when the market share was growing? Procter didn't notice it, but other people noticed it that were my competitors and other people. And then I was 26 years old, and they flew me to New York, and I'd never been flown, and they wine and dine me. And then they go, you're hired? They interviewed me on a Friday and gave me an offer on a Monday, and they gave me like 35% more than what I was making. I'm like, okay. So if you're doing, you'd be amazed at who will invest in you if you're solving something. And I hope that helps. But the associations in doing, it started with me using my own money. I'm out of state. And I'm like, these other people, I knew what I want to do, but there's a lot of other people who could benefit from graduate students, other people talking about lives and opportunities. And I got noticed.
You know, one of the beautiful, by the way, you've got some water here if you need it at any point. One of the great things I love about your story, right, is that you mentioned already, you know, this willingness to learn, willingness to solve problems. These 3 C's, 7 C's, you gave us 3, but there's 7 of them, yeah. Right? Managing those thin threads, I call them, right? Those thin threads that lead back to your past. But when you pull a thread, often many other things come with it, like the roots of a tree. Like the roots give you your fruits. Right? And the one over here, remember, our seeds.
Our seeds are our deeds, and our deeds are our seeds.
Right?
And so when people want to either ask me to help them get a job, or they're trying to get promoted, before I go, well, tell me what your seeds are and tell me what your deeds are. Tell me who you celebrate, not who you want to celebrate you, and tell me who you support. Mm. And if it's all about you, then why would I? For me, I believe in the greater good, so I will invest my time into people I think that are doing the greater good for others, and their actual seeds are what they do. It's not about your money, right? It's like when you listen to people, ask somebody, who do you celebrate, right? And if they only talk about their boss, but they don't notice their coworker that like stays up with them at the office or various other places, or will take the call to bounce an idea off of, that tells you something about them. A true team player doesn't just recognize the identified superstar, because the identified superstar isn't always the best. They may have the karma, But if you want to make the world a better place, find the people who celebrate good people, and then we'll make it all better. And I learned that from my mom.
Yeah, I love that. So here's the thing, right? So, what people don't know until you check out his website, right? ACommon1 Connectivity.com is, the people that you've hung out with, continue to visit in your retirement, right? Retirement, but you're still working, because you'll never retire, man. Let's be honest.
It's a new set of tires. Really.
New set of tires. I love that. Got that. Made a little note. New set of tires. We're talking heads of state. We're talking go as high up the tree as you want to as low as the tree as you want. Now, here's the thing. So you call yourself a commoner, right? So maybe if you can explain that to the people here, that they see a person before them who's achieved these things, but still yet all of that calls himself a commoner. Why?
First, I do have a common name, Robert Johnson. The Robert N is different. But understanding ourselves, like some people were born with a level of karma that people naturally follow, right? Some people work really hard to get people to have them follow. And then also sometimes just observe how people treat you when you step into a room, right? And I know from an early age that I've always been a commoner regardless of what I achieve by virtue of when I step into, regardless of the type of room, how I'm treated. Because people have no idea what I've been a part of. They have no idea of any of that other stuff, which is great because we travel in certain places to keep you from getting kidnapped. But anyway, they're like, hey, he's just a black guy riding a horse in Argentina. Okay.
Take the horse.
Okay with me. Yeah, take the horse.
Leave the guy,
Leave the guy, take the horse, leave him in the pampas. So anyway, so there's benefits to it. But the point is, that means it makes associations even more important. And so that means those of us who are natural commoners, regardless of what we've accomplished, have to at times step out of our comfort zone to be more assertive than we're really comfortable with, because the environment makes us do that or we're going to be run over. I would like to be a very easygoing person, and I come into a room and I'm just like, oh, I'll be treated like everyone else. But then some people are like, oh, no, you need to be there, or why are you here? I remember, I'll give you an example. I was at a part of a keynote speaker before dinner in China, all right, Beijing, China. Chocolate. I call myself a chocolate Forrest Gump, all right? So,
chocolate Forrest Gump.
If you know what Forrest Gump is, right? Yeah.
Come and grab a seat, darling.
Yeah. So, I'm supposed to give the speech. A guy from a major sports network is to introduce me. I speak the Queen's English. There's only certain ways that I greet people another way, and that's only if I really know you and your family. Otherwise, it is a Queen's English and a gentleman's handshake. This gentleman, we're in a formal thing. I'm in my Mandarin, my seamstress, Connie Wong, 25 years, Singapore, she's my auntie. So anyway, I'm in my custom thing. I show up there, the guy comes up to me and goes, hey man, what's up, dude? And I'm in this all formal, you guys. And it was just so insulting to me. So again, I'm a commoner. I'm to be one of the key speakers before the dinner, and this guy who's the only other American that's in that back room, well, there might be another, but he greets me like too comfortable. And it was very uncomfortable for me. You see what I mean? And when you're in certain societies and you're trying to, it's about respect and dignity. That was probably the most undignified moment. And then I had to go out and perform on stage, which I did, right? And I didn't say anything to him, but what I did do, because my mom told me, when somebody treats you bad, you don't always say something at that moment because it's not our job to train them. Destiny will do that. But what I did is I went back to the organization that hosted the event, and I said, I'm going to tell you this story, all right? Because you guys say your mission is the following things. And this gentleman did something that was not a part of your mission, and I don't think it was very dignified. And they said, we will never hire or recommend that person again. That individual has no idea that that's been done. And so for years, I try to be just natural and nice, but there's always somebody just trying to tried to knock me off my game. There's like 500, 600 people in that room I was going to speak to at the dinner. But those in the audience never know. You can't let somebody else's treatment of you drive your emotions. But you need to document and follow through so something gets on their record.
I love that. So
I'm Game of Thrones, like I said.
I know you got that.
This is multi-dimensional chess. I am a rook, not a knight, not a bishop because I'm not that religious, and I'm never will be a queen or king because they're too important. So I'm just a rook.
So look, we've got a few more things that I want to cover, and then we're going to go to you, the audience. If you
I have a question. Is this valuable, or is it interesting?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So after that, they're going to get their chance, right? So there'll be a third mic. It's all good. Coming to you. So if you have a question, remember, that question will be on camera. If you want another question of a more private nature, you can wait till afterwards, right? Okay, so again, what I'm not trying to do, but what's coming through is this, before we get on to Indonesia and why the people watching should come, the last bit I want to touch upon of the value aspect of our conversation. Tell us and tell them about the 168, because I think that's really valuable, a valuable reminder for people that, again, the choice part of those 3 C's of 7 that you explained before.
Yeah. So when you look at, okay, let me just tell you the 7 C's. I gave you the 3. Chance, choice, and concentration, okay? And then after that, curiosity. Choice without curiosity means you're going to do the same thing over and over. And then curiosity without concentration means you're going to do the same thing over and over again, right? Competition, and then compassion. So chance, choice, concentration, curiosity. And if you're in some place that's important, there's going to be competition. Just be ready for it, right? And then learn to have compassion, because compassion is your associates and who you celebrate, and they will celebrate and uplift you too. And then guess what that leads to in the end? Compensation. Cha-ching. Chance, choice, concentration, curiosity, competition, compassion equals compensation in my world.
So look.
And then
we'll get to
wait,
that.
real quick.
Yeah, go.
The key thing that what he's talking about is another thing I talk about, and I usually don't talk. Usually, if I'm asked to chat, I usually don't do many public type of things like these. And I've only done spoken to one high school, and usually I don't speak to students in a broader sense, maybe collegiate, not high school. But what I did share with this one school was what I call 168. Because I was taught, like my fraternity did, excuses are monumental nothings that lead to nowhere. Those who use these tools of incompetence are masters of nothing. So everybody has the same thing. There's so many people who focus on what they don't have, but guess what we all have? We all have 168 hours a week. 168 hours a week. And when people tell me they don't have any time, I go, because we went through that. And I went through it with one of your friends the other day, and I said 168 hours. If I gave you 10 hours of sleep a day, you still got a lot of hours. What are you doing with your hours? And how does your choices and your concentration fit into that? Before you complain about anybody else, how are you using your 168?
Love it. And look, maybe afterwards we'll go, if you were here for longer, we do like a special masterclass on 168 and how, when you take out 10 hours of sleep and there's a sequential order to it, you end up with about 48 to 50 hours. And this is the place and the time that those 48 to 50 hours determine who you become. That's what it comes down to. But we can do that on another occasion. So for those of you just joining us now, online, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, So today is episode number 400 of SpeakuP Monday, Destination Indonesia. Our guest is Robert N. Johnson, former vice president of a multi-billion-dollar company called Kraft. And again, we'll go through this again. The associations from Smithsonian, Kraft Foods, Proctor Gamble, Indiana University, Adelante Foundation in Honduras, the Seafarers Ministry at the Port of Oakland, California, and so much more. But look, one of the questions that's coming through, and after this, in the audience, you will have your chance to ask a question. So we'll have that microphone ready. So tell us more about your impression of Indonesia. So when I say to you, you spoke about it before, about you would like more people to see Indonesia how it truly is, not what they think it is. So if you're speaking now to some people which are maybe in the States, in the UK, or somewhere else saying, I've heard about this Indonesia place. I've heard it's going to be maybe the fourth largest economy in a couple of decades. I've heard that it printed no money during COVID, so its economy is deglobalization proof. It has one of the highest growth rates, the most stability in the world. I understand that Southeast Asia is in a pocket where the US, Europe, and so on are going through some challenges that will take maybe a while to get to the other side of. So it's a great place to be from that perspective, right? So without leading you too much, so what would you say to someone who said, hey, Indonesia, what's your impression of it? Why should we go? And what can we do there?
There's a couple things, and it goes back to one of the C's, curiosity, right? And then back to time, choice. And it depends if you're talking leisure, if you're talking business. If you're talking business, I would recommend that if you're an entrepreneur, like if right now we're at the, Tropical Nomad, right? Which is a beautiful spot, and it's well done. And places like these really need to get more attention because there's a lot of opportunity here for activity like this. There's also a lot of opportunity for corporations and firms, not just startups, to spend time here. Not everything always needs to be centrally located where you currently are. You know what I mean? And you might get a different vibe that may help you drive your business, number one. Number two, tourist-wise, I was blown away as I walked the streets of Mintang and parts of Jakarta and Surabaya. I didn't see many Americans, if any, you know what I mean, or North Americans in general. And the challenge for a lot of North Americans, Canadians do a great job of traveling all over the place, but I would recommend in the U.S., spread your wings. The countries at the equator and south are where we should be, not only for tourism, but for business opportunities. If you have a niche small business, you never know. You could do some of the manufacturing here. It doesn't always have to be where some of the other people have been outsourcing for years, right? Get to know the government. They have consulates in all the different countries. And the thing is, back to the 168, there's so many things free in a lot of our countries that all we need to do is just show up. You have the different consulates in a lot of countries, they host socials, they host annual events, just show up to those things. And you never know the network that you build from that. And that may help you with your entrepreneurial idea, may help you with your vacation idea. Now, for US, a lot of people go, oh, it's so far to travel. Set that aside if you really are seeking opportunity. The world would not be as advanced as it is today if we had not had people for centuries who opted to step outside of their village, their community, and etc. Period. So here's what I used to say to my competition. I didn't say to my competition, I said to myself, if you don't have the imagination to go where the opportunities are, I'm okay, because I'm going to make the money you aren't. So if you don't have the backbone to step out your comfort zone to go, I'm okay. Because there's going to be people like me and others that are going to say, Indonesia? I'm going to look into that. And oh, by the way, and like a lot of people go, well, I can't afford it. Again, excuse. You got libraries that are free. Read up on it, right? You got the internet. Read up on it. It blows my mind. People, when they're really interested in something, they will give it the time. And if you're really interested in building yourself and becoming not only domestic but international, the one thing I learned early on is I always felt like I had to be bigger than the organizations that I worked for. I had to be bigger than the organizations I worked for. But that also meant that I was the organization that I worked for. I was never one of those people like, oh, my company sucks. I stayed away from those people. I was Mr. Kraft Foods to people. They're like, that guy loves Kraft Foods. I was going to wear my Indiana hat. You know, I'm on the Dean's Advisory Board for the International Global Studies for Hamilton Luger. You know, I'm on the IU Foundation. We have oversight of $3.5 billion endowment. So some of us have a lot of things on our radar screen. And here's what I would ask you as we talk about a commoner and you're 168. You might be amazed that the person who you think is common or the person who isn't flashy and the person who's not on the agenda is not connected or nobody, then you messed up. I've always believed when I go to anything, if I don't exit, depending on the size of the event, if I do not exit with 5 people that I got to meet, I view the event was a failure. Any event. And I'm talking about a real decent conversation. I'm not saying business has to transact from that, but I view it as a failure. And I don't wait for people to hunt me down. And I've done that I've been doing that since high school. And you'd be away. The internet, the social media, what it's done for me, I used to do handwritten letters, which I still do, and email, which I still do, but I do every social media thing. What that has done is allowed me to keep my relationships hot. So my example, how I got even more embedded with India, or got to know Indonesia better, was through my university. We had an Asia event in Bali that I only came for 2 days, but I was on the advisory board. I was on the board for the Alumni Association. How I came to Jakarta, they were doing an event in Jakarta, and I was invited. And I said, okay. And then I told you, and we tied it all in together. So our associations lead to, I can't tell you unless I have you all sign a non-disclosure act for the rest of your life, but the opportunities you have just through associations, and they're at your fingertips. They're at your fingertips. I used to interview people, and I would recommend you never do an interview this way. Never talk down to the job that you had. Never talk down to the job that your parents had. Because the person at the other side of the table is making an assessment of can you deliver and what can you bring to my organization. And if you go, I was just a waitress. I was just a bartender. I was just a stocker. I would just bag groceries. I was just a farmer. You have not translated to them why they should want you. When Proctor Gamble interviewed me, I was working at a library. I worked at a grocery store that I had been working for 5 years, and I drove a truck because I was paying my own way, right? And I didn't just do those jobs. I understand why they needed to be done, right? And so instead of me saying, oh, I just bag groceries and stock groceries in a grocery store, I said, look, these are the peak business periods. This is how we handle the consumers. This is customer service. I didn't know. Nobody taught me that. I just knew how, maybe through Sesame Street or something, but I just learned count. The count was my favorite. But anyway, if you guys don't know Sesame Street, there was a guy called Count. But anyway, how you value you will determine how other people value you.
Man, that is a juice right there. I'm just going to quickly go, we need a microphone, right? Because I promised everybody an opportunity to ask questions. So, Guz, you got it. So, questions. I know there's some over here. Just raise a hand. The microphone will come to you. All right? Or over here, over there, here. Whichever one, man. Work it out, you people. All right, cool. So, again, for those of you just tuning in, so you're watching SpeakuP Monday, episode number 400. When we reach 500, I'm going to have a big party. When we reach 1,000, it's going to be a huge party. And I love the fact that we're at 400. And what I haven't mentioned is that Rob and I, we met. Anyone here remember an app called Clubhouse? Raise your hand if you know what Clubhouse is or was. Raise your hand if you have no idea what Clubhouse is. Great. So Rob's going to try and interrupt me, but it's not going to work this time. Clubhouse is like it kind of reached meteoric success during COVID. It's a vocal-only app. So in other words, it's before Twitter Spaces, right? It was the one, yeah? So you can basically log into this app, and it's about people's voices. You have different rooms, like a curated feed on Facebook, which when you sign up for your account, you basically curate what it is you want to hear about. Business, agriculture, NASA, space science, tech, or whatever it was, like hundreds of different categories. And then what you can do 24 hours a day, because there's people dialing in from all over the world, you could just dial in to one of these, internet, click, go in, and just listen to some incredible conversations. You'll find celebrities in there, superstars. Rob found these NASA scientists, which you would never get the chance to speak to ever, probably in your life, but you did get this chance then. So this thing had millions of people involved. And these rooms, as they're called, had anything from, you could have a room with one person, yourself, if you really wanted to, up to thousands of people at once. And it was phenomenal. So for those of you who don't realize, so SpeakuP Monday, this one, right? After this, I would go Tuesday morning, right? It's still Monday in the US. So I would do a SpeakuP Monday, different content, different guests to the US market, right? I met this guy, Rob. I met Taja Valenza, who's this Emmy Award-winning actress, the Hollywood actress who's just killing the game. But so many people of great value I found on this app where you didn't even see their face, it's just their voice. Now, this man kept coming in every now and again, and he would just drop these nuggets of value that would kind of knock your socks off, right? I use other words, but that one is PG, right? Knock your socks off. And I'll be like, who is this guy? He just keeps coming in every now and again, and boom, like a 1-2, right? So I found out his name was Robert Johnson, Robert N. Johnson, right? And then we just kind of got talking, like outside of the Clubhouse ecosystem, maybe on Instagram and so on. And because he's retired and travels around, we had this opportunity about a year or so ago to kind of cross paths, and didn't quite happen. And then to my delight, some months ago, he's like, Rob, I'm coming back. Remember, we had never met in person. And so that's what I mean, like the thin threads that you spoke about earlier on about who is your network, right? Who is your association, right? Those thin threads, looking back from what you've just said, have given me so many opportunities. It's not who you know, but who knows you. Just let that sit. It's not who you know, but who knows you. And there are so many people who don't know you, but have seen you, have ingested your content, and so on and so on and so on. And this is what's happened. It's created opportunities in the years later that actually came. So yeah, just want to quickly put that in before we go to the question. Questions with who? Who's got the microphone? There. Okay. Bhavna.
Hi. Well, first off, congratulations, Brother Rob. 400 episodes is absolutely incredible and a testament to showing up for the last 4 years.
Without missing one, huh?
Exactly.
And we will not.
Amazing. So my question is, Robert, that you've clearly been on probably many boardrooms in the corporate environment, in CPG, being at Kraft, and I imagine you would have heard a lot of reasons from clients or business reasons to not do something or to not move forward. And I'm curious if, looking back now, if there's like one excuse that came up that you actually think is maybe a limiting belief that people used and masked as a business excuse to not move forward with something. Okay.
So the boardroom, so I've been in boardrooms with the top of the top, usually is with clients and my executives, okay, from my company. Trust me, I was a baby VP, not one of the real big ones. And then actual boardrooms of not-for-profits as a board member. So I just want to clarify that, right? Because the actual private corporate board of Kraft, they did not have commoners like me there. Just going to be very blunt. You know what I mean? And so even when sometimes they were walking the halls, they would be like, I mean, you would think that board of directors would want to mix and mingle. You said this is PG? Okay,
No PG, but let it go. Let it go.
They wouldn't fucking mingle. So, I mean, you know what I mean? So, to get to your question I'm kind of skipping your question, but that kind of answers your question, right? Because you have a number of people on these boards, my opinion, because many of them end up recycling themselves. Because once you get on one or two paid corporate boards, you get added to, because it becomes a fraternity sorority that you wouldn't believe. And if you knew the money that they made on these things, blow your mind away for only 3 to 4 meetings a year. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. That doesn't include options. So I would say, how about I give boards advice? If you're going to be on a board, how about you get to know the employees? Don't be scared of them. You know? We got these organizations said our people are our valued asset. And then they go, our shareholders are. They always hide behind the shareholders. But I would say what I view as a good board and a good company with a good culture is a board that is not afraid to actually interface with the employees and the leadership that is comfortable being in the same dining room as their employees. Now, we did have that.
Beautiful question.
Is that okay?
Yeah. So next one was where? Question over here. Yeah. So Carol. Yeah. So if you're tuning in, everybody, welcome. SpeakuP Monday.
When I pass it the mic, real quick, I just want to give a shout out to my parents in heaven, John Johnson Sr., Gloria Johnson. They were awesome, and we have a couple hundred years documented of being in the U.S., so we contributed to our country, and we take pride in that. We don't let anybody diminish what we contributed to our country. And contributing to our country helped contribute to the world. And then, most importantly, my best bud, talk about thin line of associations, my bodyguard, my rock, my love, my wife, Trin, by chance, and the associations. You never know what happens. Vietnamese American.
So I was going to ask you a completely different question, but now that you've mentioned your wife, what are the top 3 qualities of an amazing wife, of a CEO or an executive, someone who has a career path like yours?
Be the second one? I mean, I'm joking, but I'm serious. You know, what's so funny is, and that's like anybody, because at the end of the day, when you first get married, when you're young, you marry. Sometimes it can be like a business agreement. You're a good person. I'm a good person. We're going to do great. But you're working hard, and then over time, somebody may not like you anymore because you're working hard, right? And when you get a certain age, destiny provides you. You know, somebody decides to leave you, fine. My family is like, you can't keep somebody. If they want to walk away from you, walk away, all right? And that opened up my opportunity for me to be with my wife, Trin. My daughter and I actually met my wife at the same time, December 15 years ago, this week. And I was on crutches. And my daughter, who was about 7 years old at the time for my first marriage, she goes, Daddy, I'm concerned about you being in California by yourself. You need somebody to watch movies with. And she said, what about that lady we met at that Christmas social who came in? And I go, well, you know, Daddy's like a nerd. I mean, it doesn't work like that. And she goes, just try. We've been together ever since. My mother loved her. My mother had never given me advice in my whole life on relationships. And it came a time, she's like, you've been dating this woman forever. I was taping my mother because I started audio taping my mom. And she comes out of nowhere, my daughter, my youngest sister, my mom, and my mom, very silent woman, silent Southern Arkansas woman. She says, Robert, we like Trin. Your daughter likes Trin. And then my mom goes, marry her. And this is a soft-spoken Southern woman. So anyway, does that it? So I think the thing is, it depends, And sometimes, I think some people have people. We all change over time, and nothing's forever. But have someone that is as comfortable as they are with themselves, maybe as busy as they are with themselves. Someone that you also uplift, because it can't all be about you. You know what I mean? And there's a balance. We're like yin and yang, literally, And then if you have to be embarrassed by natural biological functions with your spouse, then you don't need to be with them. I'm just joking, but I'm serious, right? So technically, if there's somebody who's really your soulmate and your partner, you should be able to fall down. Some certain things should happen. They should not be embarrassed by you. It's just like natural. And I found that in my wife, and my daughter picked her for me.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Can I have one more?
We all knew the second one was coming.
Yeah.
It's okay. Go for it.
So I meet a lot of men who are chasing their dream here in Bali, and who look at having a relationship as something that actually competes with their dream of building a business and being very successful. It is my opinion that actually having a relationship is something that is very uplifting and helps you getting to a higher place and create much more. So what would you say to these men in order for them to realize that actually this is a good thing?
168. How you use your time and how they're using your time. But the big thing is, when I was used to call my mom allocated only so many minutes for each kid, right? Because mom and dad had there were 7 of us total, right? And I would say, well, John's not doing this, or Rita's not doing it, and mom would be like, let's just talk about the good stuff. And so what she was trying to say is, find the gratitude in the good. And so what I would recommend for, let's say, the men, or whoever's, not just men, whoever's really working really hard to try and climb, is if you can find someone, or they find you, I don't really think you need to search, but if you can find a set of people or a person who celebrates you as much as you celebrate them, you got to keep her. You got to keep her. You know what I mean? And you have to be as good when you're at the top of your game than when you fall. And it's better for you to be generous and kind. Being kind costs nothing. And honestly, if any of us can't find somebody who appreciates us and they're not kind, as my mom said, it's better to be by yourself.
Boom.
Just be happy.
Yeah. Question? Okay, my brother.
Wait, before you ask the question, what chess piece are you?
Depends on who I'm playing.
All right, when you're trying to make money.
I'm often the knight or bishop. It's funny that you're admitting that you're part psychic, because I was going to ask about the Rook, because I look at the Rook as an overlooked piece, because he's very, very powerful in what he commands. He commands a line, and he commands a square. He's the cornerstone of whatever line he's on. So he's not like a common piece. He often doesn't get brought into the game until later to move into the ending games. He's not in the beginning or mid games. So my first question was, with that being said about the Rook, and the way I look at it, why would you consider yourself, just go a little more into that piece of the Rook, you know what I'm saying, for yourself?
So for those of you, we're talking about chess. And usually I play multi-dimensional mental chess. So right now we're just talking about a flat plane board, right? So usually, but anyway, so a Rook can move straight and it can move sideways. It can only move like this way, no diagonal. Bishop can move diagonal. Knight can move, like an L, Pawns can go one spot or forward. They can attack diagonal. So things like that. So you understand that. So the Rook usually isn't the first one played because it can't be played. The knight can jump over a pawn, and a lot of our organizations have knights, and a lot of those knights aren't always the nicest people in the world too, because they're always jumping over the pawns and they treat them like shit. And I've worked with a lot of people. And when I retired, I have 3 rules. I only work with good people who do good things for others. Deeds are their seeds. And then highly competitive people. But the last one, I can no longer make assholes millionaires. Because you can have somebody who's legal, but they're an ass. They're legal, but not ethical. They're legal, but not nice. They're legal, but they only celebrate themselves. And so the knight jumps everywhere, right? The queen, I will never be as important as a queen and king, but what the rook can do, what happens when the queen or when the king needs somebody?
He castles with his boy.
Exactly. Can he castle with anybody else?
Nope.
Exactly. So I made a career of going to the problem where nobody else wanted to go, where you possibly could have been fired. If you go where I'm so common. If I went where everybody went, I wouldn't be noticed and nobody wanted it. So I had to go where other people didn't want to go and make it sexy. And so I'm a rook. And the other thing is, think about this. Who is your best marketer of yourself? And then who is the worst marketer of yourself? You. And most of us will not share things about ourselves because we're like, ooh, I'm going to look like I want it too much, or I'm talking about myself too much. But I'm like, my mom used to say, if they're going to hate you because of that, they're going to hate you when you don't do it. So why not do it, right? And so if you look at my website, like a lot of people tell you what they can do, right? I show you the awards that I've gotten, the industry awards, the diamonds for being on the top at the company, the awards from the clients, so here's what I would recommend you guys do, and this is as a rook. The reason I'm giving an example of rook. Rooks don't get noticed until they have to be noticed. And that's been my whole life.
That's very cold.
Goosebumps.
Yes, my second piece is back to the FU money. So here in Bali, in Digital Nomads, there are more entrepreneurs and business owners than there are employees who are thinking about, I would just say that business owners and entrepreneurs think more about FU money and are closer to FU money than employees. And then you said, hey, man, at 50, half a century, I was out of there. Then you said, but you got to have FU money first. So you came in like a business owner and an entrepreneur, a current with an exit strategy.
I knew nobody would be loyal to me. So I had to be loyal to me.
You're going to have to go into that. What do you mean you knew nobody would be loyal to you?
So when you start your career, who cares about you? Think about this. Who wants to make any of us a millionaire? I know a lot of people get sold by these people who sell these books and go, hey, if you read my book, you'll be a millionaire. I'll show you. Next time, ask them a question. How did you make your first million? And you'll find out they made their first million selling you on how to be a millionaire through their books on how to be a millionaire. I wouldn't take advice from those people. You need to take advice from somebody who actually took their time and figured it out. Because lightning only strikes so often, so you got to think it through, right? So when you think about it is, early on, you got to listen to people. When I was in Louisville, Kentucky, working in the South there, some of the old clients would say in their own voice, they go, young man, when you get your bonus, make sure you put half of it away or save it all. Because guess what it's called? They go, it's called a bonus. It's not a guarantee. It's called a bonus, not a guarantee. There are so many people who live into their bonus, and there's so many people who live into their credit. So if you start the right way, and then my grandma used to say, Grandma Lou, she's from Mississippi, she goes, baby, you can have your dreams, but do not make your dreams my nightmare. You can have your dreams, but do not make your dreams my nightmare. So think of all the people who are trying to do something, and they get upset with their friends because their friends don't want to give them money for it. It's not your fault. So, if you want to get your FU money, be around friends that don't get upset when you don't give them your money. And my mother was like, don't loan money. Don't beg for it, don't loan for it. But if you solve something that the consumer wants or somebody wants, people will want to put the money behind you. But your associations give you the foundation. And so many people leave their associations on the table. Your school, your former high school teacher, your coach. And the thing is, sometimes you need cheerleaders, and those are free cheerleaders. So people go and pay for a coach. They go to the priest. Well, you got coaches all around you who've been saying great things about you, and they don't always have to be in your business. Sometimes you just need somebody that says, I like you and you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it to your heart's desire. If you can do it in your imagination, then you can do it in real life.
The root word of imagination is magi, which is the root word of magic. You answered the end of the question because I was going to say, what about an entrepreneur versus a person who works with somebody else? But
no, do what you do.
Your answer was just like, yo, don't leave associations on the table. Right. Thank you.
Exactly. And then you can understand branding. Did you hear that motorcycle?
Yes.
All right. We have an idea what it is.
A Harley.
Yeah. Well, usually I don't give free advertising like that.
My bad.
All right. But anyway, Harley, you need to pay us. But anyway, the point is when you create associations, I would ask you, if I see you in a year from now, when you make a noise, what does somebody think about you? Like, what are you known for? What do you solve? What is your Harley sound? It don't have to be loud. It could be a whimper, but it is a sound that somebody hears. So what are you known for? And when you're known for something, you'd be look, I had tea with the Princess of Thailand. I showed you the picture. It's on my website. So anything that I tell you, like a lot of people tell you things, I give you a visual aid of when it happened and where it happened, right? Raised in upstate New York, raised in Missouri, commoner, ends up having tea with the Princess of Thailand, whose mentor was a part of the Thai royal family. Hello? How does that happen? Associations. Doing. You all can do it. And you can build your FU money by how you balance those things too. But just be around good people who celebrate you too, and find the right people to celebrate. And when you need money, don't give up your soul. Because if you really got something that can solve something, see, here's what drives me crazy. A number of you great entrepreneurs come up with these great ideas, and there's a lot of people who are listening to what you're doing, and they may even talk to you, and they will take your idea, tweak it a bit, and blow it out, and they'll never come back to you and say thank you. They'll never come back and add you back. Or they may say thank you, but they wouldn't. They'd be like, well, hey, you know what? I'm making $5 billion right now. I know you were there in Tropical Nomad with me, but thanks for the coffee. You know? I would ask that as you come along, remember those, not the coaches, but your other players that were seated next to you when you were programming or doing something that you could bounce ideas off of.
You know, that's a beautiful point. We're going to be closing soon, but here's the thing. So this is about, as you said, visual aids, right? Alliterating a story so you really get it. So we had a chat about the tech guys, right? And just what you just said last about, you know, it's the closeness. So if you could give that as an example, I think that will really seal it.
So I read a lot, and I would recommend people do the same thing, right? Read what you want, but read. But how you read matters. So a lot of people read a biography to understand the individual. The way I read biographies, to understand their ecosystem around them. Who were their parents? Who were their friends? Who gave them the chance? And then I do a deeper dive on who gave them a chance. So for example, in the US, everybody likes General Eisenhower. Well, General Eisenhower during World War II, he was one of the generals in the European theater. He had no battlefield experience before he was elevated to be over a major theater. None. But Roosevelt and General Marshall grabbed him from way below and pulled him above a lot of other people. All right? Now, that's not the tech thing, but I'm giving you an example. Sometimes you can be an amazing leader in areas that aren't exactly, he had the administrative stuff, he had the staff. He didn't have like the boom bang, all that other stuff, but he knew how to get the other people who could do it, right? So, example. So when you read a biography, so if you read about, I'm not even going to say his name, but one of these tech people, you'll find that the people they surrounded themselves sometimes had psychology degrees, art history degrees, HR, something like that. And what they ended up doing is but they had somebody who had their mic. They may have the tech, but they had somebody who could communicate it in a way that they did not have the capability to. And a lot of times if you look at it, look at who their roommates were. There are some tech, quote, evangelists out there from major multi-billion-dollar companies who are on tons of boards. But look into their background. They have no tech experience. They didn't do any programming. No. They never touched a server. They were the roommate or friend of so-and-so and so-and-so. They just got in early. I'm not mad at them.
Association.
But it was their association. And I'm not saying they weren't productive, but I'm just saying don't beat yourself up if you don't have that specific degree. If you do the background check on a lot of people, they don't. When you see somebody that said that they're all of a sudden a millionaire or billionaire, check their family history. When you read a biography of somebody that's bright and smart, check their associations. You'll find that their parents, one person who's big in tech, his father was a lawyer, his mother was big in business, and they had CEOs who would come to dinner all the time, okay? Because she was at the United Way and places like that. You guys know who it is. They also have a big not-for-profit foundation, recently divorced, but we won't go there. But anyway, everybody focuses on this guy. Oh, he started in his garage, blah, blah, blah. That's, okay, yeah, but that's bullshit. How many of us have a successful lawyer dad that's already networked and a mom that's like networked that like you can just spill ideas on because certain people are coming through your house? So when he had contract issues with IBM or things weren't getting seen, guess who was at dinner? And they didn't force it. It's just chance meetings. So I want you to understand that you can do a lot, but be very careful of what leadership you associate yourself with on trying to be a billionaire, because their start is not like a lot of our starts. I'm not blaming them for their start, but don't beat yourself up for not getting what they got. We all want to give that next generation that privilege. That's what we should do. But do not be fooled if you're starting at first base or batting with somebody on third base. It's not a good story for them to sell to you in a biography. But if you're going to be a successful business person, you need to understand everybody's associations because they're going to be working for you. They're going to be your partner. And you want the truth.
Man, there's so much to dig into. So what we're going to do, right? So Rob, the last thing I'm going to leave you with, I'll give you 2 minutes to think, not that you need the time to think, is if there's anything else as a close that you would like to leave people with, right? You've got about 2 minutes. So here's the thing. So next week, who here is interested in sustainable cities, smart cities? Raise your hand to see if they're working. Beautiful. Next week, we have a guy, Giancarlo, right? Bright guy, United Nations, UAE, was also working on it. Who knows about NEOM? There's a few people know about NEOM. Who knows nothing about NEOM? Great. Something for you to research. Okay, I won't be that nasty. NEOM was at the Red Sea. It's a project that's being undertaken thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometers to make basically the smartest city in the world, to cut a long story short. It's being undertaken as we speak, and he was one of the original people to work on the infrastructure and how the whole thing, sustainable strategic development. So just go NEOM, N-E-O-M, N-E-O-M, just check it out, NEOM project. It's basically building the city of the future. That's another word for it, but it's thousands and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of kilometers. And I think 10 or 11 of the world's brightest architects have been invited and paid to come and work on it. Right? It's phenomenal. Maybe next week he'll give you a bit of insight into what's really going on, but maybe not on camera. But a phenomenal guy, worked, as I said, has created policy for sustainable city design that nations and governments follow. So like, he's an amazing guy. So Giancarlo, Italian background, but brought up in Florida, in the US. So that's next week. So if you're interested in that, make sure you do come. In the meantime, just quickly want to give a thumbs up to our technical partners, Tropical Nomad. We've got Guzman, Ayu, Barichi's around here somewhere. Thank you very much. I mean, again, episode 400. We don't intend to stop anytime. And we've got a co-host, welcome back, Bhavna Parihar. We'll have a chat later. So look, tonight has been, for me, a really powerful episode because, you know, we came in here maybe with an understanding to talk about certain things. But as with all of these types of interviews, it's the energy of where it's taking you. So where I think tonight has taken us is on this deeper dive into some of the seeds of success, right? And if you were listening, and a lot of you were taking notes, which I love, I see a whole page of notes over here. I want those later, right? I spent 2 days with you. I've learned so much, and I've made pages of notes like this. So Rob, to you and to all of the, I'll give them one more mention because many of them are watching now. The Smithsonian guys are watching. The Kraft Food guys are watching. The Proctor Gamble guys are watching. The Indiana University Association are watching. The Adelante Foundation from Honduras are watching. The Seafarers Ministry of the Port of Oklahoma, California. Oakland, thank you. That was Oklahoma, didn't I? Yeah, Oakland, thank you very much. Are also watching. So we have this fantastic, incredible bunch of associations for you. And that's one of the things that I think has been reinforced so many times is look at those thin threads, the people around you. Look back, remember the things that you've done, who you've done it with. Remember the people who have been your supporters, right? Don't lose contact with these guys to try and leapfrog like the night into the future. Take your time, but make sure you look after those thin threads and those associations along the way. Hopefully I haven't stolen the thunder of your closing, but that's what's coming over, man. So over to you to see us out, my brother.
First of all, SpeakuP Monday. Thank you, Robert. Great job. Tropical Nomad, phenomenal design, phenomenal property. The studio team, amazing. I really appreciate everyone who took the time to listen and ask questions and show up here. Those who are watching live and those who will watch in the future. Don't just watch this. Check out some of the other ones. How we learn is how we listen. And as you were talking about what Robert was talking about Clubhouse is called social audio. What we found out was the power of audio. Sometimes we need not just visual and not just typing. Sometimes we need to hear other people. So I would say gratitude. Remember, you're not going to remember all the C's, but if you remember at least the top 3, chance, choice, and concentration. Gratitude, find those you should celebrate. And don't feel bad if you haven't talked to them in a while. Celebrate them. Do not let relationships go cold. You may help someone just through association. There's a number of people who end up taking themselves out. And some of people go, oh, I thought I was going to call that person. And you didn't. And that is like destiny telling you, how about you give Sandy, Susie, Jimmy a call? During COVID, almost every 2 weeks, I lost someone. Okay? I lost someone or I lost someone that was close to someone. Every 2 weeks, on average. All right? Now, when you have a big net, that's going to happen. And when you're connected to people, that's going to happen. And they were all ages. The one gentleman, the last time we bumped into each other was in Australia. He was a black American. And we just bumped into each other. We had worked together. And then he went off and I went and we bumped into each other in Sydney, Australia. Next thing I know, he died in COVID a year later. So show appreciation and everything like that. So I would say go to ACommon1 Connectivity.com, check it out, not asking for business, but use it as an example. A lot of people write their websites and tell you, they pontificate what they can do. If you really want business, show people what you've done. Because guess what? I'm going to use a bad word.
Do it.
I'm going to shit what you hope to do. I give a shit what you can do so I can make money. And that's what every company does. Do not fall into the fluffy stuff that companies tell you. Oh, yeah, I want to hear your thing. And many of you get taken into that. Oh, I really. No, you need to, until they're your friend, you need to be, I delivered it. This is the problem. This is how I attack it. These are the resources. These are the people involved. Do not let them digress you on that fluff stuff. Because they're even if they give you a little money, they're kind of interviewing you too. You see what I mean? So I will leave you with this. This is from Wordsworth. Tell me not in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream. For the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave, do it this way, and the grave is not our goal. Dust thou art, to dust return us was not spoken of the soul. Not enactment, not in sorrow, is our destiny and our way, but to act that each tomorrow finds us further than today. Thank you. Thank you for having me.